Remember that scene from The Color Purple where Sophia is beaten by the police for standing up for herself after she offended a white woman and the police were called to intervene? Well, that's not new. Having an uncooperative attitude, speaking up for yourself, or failing to give deference to a white person has always been a justification for police abuse against black women. What happened to Sophia has happened to countless black women because the police have often been used to intervene on behalf of white citizens who've had a problem with a black woman. In 1947, a black woman named Billie Moten Hines was beaten by the police when she refused to accept a summons. Another black woman during that time, Mrs. Lena Thomas, got into an argument with a grocery store employee and the police were called and beat her. For black women, suffering abuse at the hands of law enforcement goes back to the shores of Africa. The earliest policing in this country started with Europeans taking black bodies, especially black women, from the shores of Africa and bringing them to America for forced labor. Black women were not only used for labor, but were also used for creating more enslaved black people. So they were valuable to the institution of slavery. One historian, Gerda Lerner, said that black women actually had it harder under slavery because black women faced multiple forms of brutality and exploitation. After slavery ended, things didn't get any better for black women because after slavery came convict leasing. Black people being arrested for petty crimes and sold back into slavery. But for black women, they reserved a special form of injustice. There was actually a law passed in Mississippi during this time that made it a crime to be a black woman. You heard that correctly. After emancipation, Mississippi made it illegal to be an unemployed black woman. And if you were found to be, then you would be declared vagrant, arrested, fined, and imprisoned. And those that couldn't pay the fine would be sold out to hire by anyone who could pay that fine. During the Civil Rights Movement, black women, not just black men, were constantly abused by the police. Famed civil rights organizer Fannie Lou Hamer was beaten and arrested and assaulted by the police.
And it wasn't too long before 3 white men came to my cell. One of these men was a state highway patrolman, and he said, "We're going to make you wish you was dead."
Remember in The Color Purple when Sophia was forced to work for Miss Millie? Well, that's not new either. Just like under slave codes and black codes, the police have always been used as tools for enforcing employment of black women. In 1946, a black woman named Margaret DeGraffenreid, Reed, a mother of 4 children, joined other workers striking against a North Carolina tobacco company for a wage of 65 cents an hour. The police beat her, and she was arrested and sentenced to work on the road gang. The same reasons to justify abuse against black women 150 years ago are still being used today. Black women are uncooperative, have bad attitudes, and are violent. It's the same excuses being reused over and over again to justify abuse against black women. And police abuse against black women does not discriminate. It doesn't matter if you're young, if you're old, disabled, pregnant. Black women are constantly mistreated by law enforcement. Whether that is an elderly black woman suffering from a mental health crisis like Eleanor Bumpers was, who was a 67-year-old black woman who lost her life when the police tried to evict her from her apartment and instead took her life, or a child like Ayanna Stanley Jones, who was 7 years old when the police executed a botched raid on her home and they fired her as she slept on her sofa next to her grandmother. Black women suffer no matter the circumstance. I could go on and on with stories and atrocities that black women have faced at the hands of an unjust system that not only abuses them, but also erases their stories. Black women matter. What happens to them matters, and we must continue telling their stories.